Whoa, oh, oh. La, da, 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 oh, oh, oh. La, da, 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 oh, oh, oh. La, da, da, da. Making our Christmas memory.
Hello and welcome to part 1.2 of my search for my top 5 decks that came into my collection for 2023. Here is a reminder of the rating criteria and also the rating scale. If you want more details on that or you didn't catch the first part of this video, go back and check that out and come back and watch this one. If you haven't done that, now is the time because I'm about to spoil and show what is currently in our top 5 list. So here's the current top 5 list of the decks that we have gone through so far. Let's get started on the next group. Next we have the Witchling Academy Tarot, and I bought this back in June and I paid $21, and that is the current price on Amazon. I don't think we can talk about the usability of this deck without talking about its box, which I am not sure how I feel about. I do like that the way it looks. It has a look of a book when you put it on the shelf, and then you open it out and the guidebook is tucked inside here and the cards are here. And this is where it poses a problem, because if you stand this on your shelf, the cards tend to slip out if it's not really tight. So in order to make sure that doesn't happen, maybe a rubber band around it or lay it down. But I like the way it looks. I don't like the way it functions. So we have to knock down for usability on that, because when I look at this and feel like opening it, I know I'm going to have to put it back in the box and I'm going to have to stand it up to make sure the cards don't fall out. So that definitely is a factor. Also, they haven't made the finger hole low enough, so you can get this many of the cards out and then you're stuck having to tip the box on its end here to get the cards out. And the fun doesn't stop there because now we have a card stuck underneath because they haven't secured this in fully, so the cards slide underneath this bit here. So for usability out of the box, it really is getting the angry, frustrated face right away before we even get the cards out. And I etch mine in pink here. So as far as card quality and shuffleability, it's great. I mean, I love the cardstock on this deck. It's fantastic. It shuffles really well. And no complaints here on card quality. It isn't high card quality, but for a mass market deck, it is really enjoyable to handle. So for card usability, for the box, it would get an angry, frustrated face. If it was just based on the cards themselves and the usability of the cards themselves, it would be getting perhaps party face or high smiley face. So I think, to be fair, we're going to have to give this a neutral face right in the middle here, because the box is a big thumbs down, the cards are a big thumbs up. So I'm going to give this deck for card usability the neutral face and a score of 50 points. So for versatility, this deck has a very specific story. I have to be in a very specific mood, taking part in a very specific practice. And I feel like for me, it sits in that space in the summer when I'm wanting to watch anime, I'm playing with My Little Ponies. It very much sits in a specific season, and also more than that, a specific mood. And I'm not always in that mood. And I wonder too whether this deck, I've kind of played with it, I've enjoyed it. And then it's going to have to sit a while for me to feel that, initial joy from it. So For versatility, I'm probably not going to pull this out for a general reading. It's just going to be for that specific thing. So I'm going to have to give it a low face on versatility. And I am going to give it the unamused face and a score of 30. As far as energy and personal connection, the energy of this deck is really pleasant. And I did make a personal connection with it. So I'm going to give this for energy and personal connection a smiley face and a score of 62. For readability, I think this deck reads really well with or without the guidebook. So no problems there at all. It's given really good readings, and I really enjoy reading with it. So I'm going to give this the party face for readability, and I'm going to give it a score of 89. For uniqueness, there are a few other decks that do this particular job if I search the internet. Not mass market decks though. Those decks would be, I can think of maybe one or two others that are similar in this style as far as mass market is concerned, but not exactly in its kind of storytelling way. And I know there are a few indie decks that do a similar thing, but would cost you 3 times as much. So I'm going to give this a high score for uniqueness, and I am going to give it a party face, but on the lower end of party face, because I could find it elsewhere if I really wanted to. So I'm going to give it a party face with a score of 80. So that is going to give the Witchling Academy a very healthy score of 311 points. And it is actually knocking out the Tarot Nuages for the 5th Next place on the list is the Spiral Tarot. I got this back in June, at the end of June, and I got it off eBay for $10. But you can also still get it on Amazon, and it is currently $21. When I initially saw this deck, I was really put off by the borders. I was like, what is going on there? But then after looking at it a few times, I actually fell in love with these strange tie-dyed kind of purple borders on this deck. So I purchased it. The backs look like this and don't match really at all. But I kind of love that about it. So let's look at card usability. This deck is smaller than a standard tarot size. US Games cardstock again, so a little bit thicker, but very easy to shuffle. And when it breaks in, that kind of thick stiffness goes away, making it really lovely to shuffle. So this is going to get a very high score again on the usability because the titles are very clear and it's easy to shuffle. So I am going to give this a party face for its usability, and I'm going to give it a score of 94. As far as versatility, I actually feel like this deck is quite versatile as well. I feel like I could use it in general readings. I feel like it might be a deck that I could use in other practices that is going to have that specific energy. So for versatility, I'm going to give it a smiley face. I'm going to give it a score of 64. As far as energy and personal connection, the energy of this deck is a little bit odd and a little bit strange. I don't feel an immediate personal connection to this deck. I feel like I have to get to know it. I feel like I have to form a relationship. And I don't feel like I've fully done that yet. So for energy and personal connection, I am going to give this the neutral face on the lower end with a score of 39. As far as readability, it's very easy to read. I kind of like the little white book gives very succinct kind of meanings, letting you know kind of a little bit of what you're looking at in the card. But it doesn't go in depth, but it can definitely be read without the guidebook. So for readability, I'm going to give it a smiley face with a score of 59. As far as uniqueness, I mean, you have to give it some points on uniqueness with these clashing borders. And I mean, there is nothing like this with the not matching backs, although it's pretty much an RWS clone, it's going to pull it out for uniqueness in whoever decided on this style for, to frame the beautiful artwork and this deck. So I really appreciate when somebody really goes outside the box and does something a little bit different and out there that, but not everybody is going to like. I would just have loved to be like, oh yes, this will be perfect. Let's do a purple tie-dyed border. And what is going to go with that better than anything else? Let's do a maroon title here with the white font, and let's make it italic just for fun. So I am going to give this the party face because this makes me very happy for its uniqueness, and I am going to give it a score of 96 for uniqueness. That is going to give the Spiral Tarot a very healthy score of 352, knocking the Rebel Heart Tarot out of 4th place and pushing it down into 5th place, knocking the Witchling Academy down into 6th. Next, we have the Tarot of the Sacred Feminine. I bought this back in July and I paid $20. The current Amazon price is $21. So let's have a look at card usability for this deck. This is a low Scarabeo deck, so really nice to shuffle and really nice size. So for card usability, it's going to score very highly. It's a pleasure to shuffle. It really is. Low Scarabeo decks for me are a real pleasure to shuffle. So I'm going to give it the party face, and I'm going to give it a score of 97 on card usability. As far as versatility, I purchased this deck when I was doing my practice pretty intensely with Inanna, and she really comes through for me in this deck in her many forms as many different goddesses. So for that fact, as far as versatility, although I could use it in a general reading and different types of reading, I have pigeonholed it very securely into that practice. So for card versatility, it is going to score on the lower end, and it's going to get the angry, frustrated face, and I'm going to give it a score of 16. For energy and personal connection, this deck is beautiful. It brings that connection for me to Inanna, which is amazing. So I'm going to give the party face for energy and personal connection, and I am going to give it a score of 81. As far as readability, the guidebook is in a couple different languages. They've put symbols instead of the names for the suits, which can throw me off a little. Obviously, it's really clear what they are, but still, I personally would prefer just the word rather than having to decipher a symbol, no matter how simple it is, on the card. So for readability, I am going to give this the unamused face, and I am going to give it a score of 33. As far as uniqueness, I think this scores really highly for me, just because I think it picks up an energy that not a lot of other decks do. Although there are other decks that focus on the sacred feminine, there are other decks that focus on goddesses, many of them. But this, to me, has a very unique style, has a very unique voice. So for me, for uniqueness, I'm going to give it the smiley face, and I'm going to give it a score of 64. That gives the Tarot of the Sacred Feminine a total score of 290 points, putting it in 10th place. The next deck on the list is a little bit more of a recent acquisition, and I got this back in September for $22 on Amazon, and the current Amazon price is $22. This deck I saw at the table when I was at Newt's this year and had the opportunity to flip through it there, and then I went ahead and ordered it because I really liked the feel of it. As far as card usability, This is also a low Scarabeo deck, but it feels a little bit different than the Sacred Feminine. It has a little bit more of a cardboardy feel than the last one. It feels a little bit more matte. The card quality doesn't feel quite as high as the last one, but it is very easy to shuffle. And I do enjoy it. So we're going to give this one a high smiley face for card usability, and I am going to give it a score of 79. As far as versatility, this deck loses points on versatility because of its color palette. I feel like I am not going to pull for it. I'm not going to reach to use it unless I am in the mood for this particular art style, for this particular black and white color palette. I have to be in a particular mood. I don't feel like I would use this deck with any specific spiritual practices, so that's leaving it in the kind of general reading category or readings around a specific energy that seem to come through with this particular style. So for versatility, I am going to give it the unamused face, and I'm going to give it a score of 30. As far as energy and personal connection, I don't feel a very positive energy coming through this deck. The energy feels a little bit unusual to me, and I have not made a personal connection with this deck yet. So I am going to give it the unamused face as well on personal connection and energy, and I'm going to give it a score of 25. As far as readability, I think it's very easy to read. I think the black and white color palette is done really well in this deck. The guidebook is in the multiple languages again, and there are a little bit more than keywords in the minors for this deck. So for readability, the clarity on the card and the easiness to actually physically read the card, and the fact that it's pretty much an RWS clone in many ways, makes it very readable. But the guidebook could give a little bit more and could expand on those readings. So I am going to give this a low and neutral face, and I'm going to give it a score of 38. As far as uniqueness, I think this deck is really unique. I think the art style is really unique. The black and white color palette is interesting because of how clear the images are. And I really enjoy its unique style. I think if it wasn't in my collection, there might be others that would try and fill its spot, but it wouldn't hit exactly in the same way. So I am going to actually give this a party face for uniqueness, and I'm going to give it a score of 80. That is going to give the Disorder Tarot of Innocence a score of 252 and put it in 14th place on the list. Next on the list, we have the Disney Villains Tarot deck. I got this back in August. I paid $18 and the current price is $22 on Amazon. So let's have a look at card quality and card usability. So the card quality is really nice. It's nice and thin. It feels really good. It actually feels more than its $22 price tag. The cards are nice and thin. They shuffle really well. Maybe a little floppy because of their thinness, but it makes it nice to handle. I feel like it's a little bit taller of a deck, so if we had really small hands, it might be difficult to shuffle, but for me, it's no trouble at all. So for card usability for the Disney Villains Tarot deck, I'm going to give it the party face. I'm going to give it a score of 85. As far as versatility, I haven't quite found this deck's spot in my collection. I don't think I'm quite sure when I want to pull it out. And so for that reason, for versatility, I am going to give it the neutral face, and I'm going to give it a score of 45. I love this card. For energy and personal connection, I think it's really good energy. I haven't quite made, I don't think, a personal connection with this deck yet, but I'm still going to give it the smiley face for energy and personal connection, and I'm going to give it a score of 65. As far as readability, it has a really nice guidebook. It's really clear to read. I think the readings are really good. And so for readability, I am going to give it a smiley face as well. I'm going to give it a score of 68. As far as uniqueness, there's nothing, there's not another deck as far as I know, that focuses on the villains of the Disney world. So as far as uniqueness, for that reason, I have to score it pretty highly. I don't think there's anything that would quite take its place in my collection if it wasn't here. So for uniqueness, I am going to give it the party face, and I'm going to give it a score of 81. That is going to give the Disney Villains Tarot deck a very healthy score of 344 points, knocking the Rebel Heart Tarot out of 5th
Next
place.
on
On the list is the Grunge Tarot, and I got this on Amazon for $22. That's its current price back in May. And I don't think we can talk about the card usability without discussing the box. This deck comes in this box, but it comes in a box inside a box. So I think there's also a tuck box. But this, I don't mind the bottom opening if there's a magnetic closure. With this one, there isn't. So when you actually set the box upright, this just slides out completely. So let's get the cards out and have a look. So let's talk about card usability. The cards are a little bit oversized. There's a little bit of a glossy finish on them. I feel like this does feel like a $22 deck. It's a little bit of a stretch for me to shuffle, and the cards are a little bit stiff, but it does give a good shuffle once you get in there. But I'm not looking forward to shuffling it. It isn't the most pleasant deck to shuffle. I'm not excited about it. So I am going to give it, for card usability, I'm going to give it the unamused face, and I'm going to give it a score of 19. As far as versatility, I feel like this deck has of course, a theme, that 90s kind of grunge theme. I don't feel like it's that versatile. And so for that reason, I'm going to give it a low score on versatility, and I'm also going to give it the unamused face with a score of 22. For energy and personal connection, the energy on this deck doesn't feel that great to me. And I haven't really made a personal connection. While I wanted to connect with this time period, I don't feel a connection to the characters in the deck. I feel like during this time period, I wasn't doing these things. And I kind of feel like almost like the characters in this deck kind of irritate me a little bit. And there's certainly definitely some work there that can be done with readings with that energy. But for energy overall and personal connection, I'm going to give this the angry, frustrated face and give it a score of 14. As far as readability, I think the cards read fairly well. I don't feel like they're difficult to read, but I don't feel like they're the easiest to read either. It does have a nice guidebook with it as well. So I am going to give it the neutral face on readability, and I'm going to give it a score of 55. As far as uniqueness, it definitely has a unique voice. I don't feel like there's anything else in my collection that quite is like this or fills this kind of time period in quite this way. So we're going to give it the party face for uniqueness with a score of 90. That is going to give the Grunge Tarot a total number of points of 200 out of 500 and put it in second to last place before the Sacred Next on the list is the Hanson Roberts Tarot. I actually just got this in October. From eBay. I paid $16, but it's currently available still on Amazon for $22. I got this lovely old version from 1985. So it's worth looking on eBay if you're looking for an older version of the deck. You can certainly get them at a very reasonable price. So this is the old US Games card stock. So we look at card usability. The cards are actually a little thin. It is fun to shuffle, and I do get excited about shuffling it. It's a little bit bigger than bridge size, the deck, so it's nice to shuffle, but the cards are very, very thin. So for card usability, I am going to give this a smiley face, but a low end of the smiley face because of the card's thinness, and I'm going to give it a score of 59. So as far as versatility, I think this deck has a lot of versatility. I can imagine using it in a lot of different ways, but mostly just for general readings, and just because I'm feeling kind of the artwork and the style of the deck, especially this older version of the deck. So for versatility, I'm going to give it a smiley face again, and I'm going to give it a score of 62. So for energy and personal connection, this deck has really good energy, and I do feel a personal connection to the deck. So it's going to get another smiley face, and it is going to get a score of 70. For readability, it's really easy to read. My version didn't come with a little white book or anything, but there is a larger book that uses this as a reference. It's really an RWS clone, so readability is pretty high. So I am going to give this the party face for readability, and I'm going to give it a score of 81. As far as its uniqueness, I think that's where it's going to score a little bit lower, because, you know, there are many decks that do the same thing. This is an RWS clone, and there are many of those. There are decks that fill a similar space in my collection. So for uniqueness, I am going to give it the unamused face, and I'm going to give it a score of 20. That is going to give the Hanson Roberts a total score of 292, and putting it in 10th place, 1 point higher than the Medieval Mischief Tarot, which is now in 11th. The next deck on the list is the Influence of Angels Tarot. I got this back in May for $20 when it first came out. It's currently on Amazon for $23. So if we look at card usability, the cards in this deck are actually really nice. I think that if you looked at this deck, you would not think that it was in the $23 price range. It is our first deck that we have with gold gilding, and it doesn't feel sharp to me. It is actually really nice gilding for a mass market deck. The card quality is good. It's a good weight. It shuffles really well. What I will say is when I shuffle it, at times the gilding gets a little bit stuck or something, and so the riffle shuffle sometimes messes up a bit. I don't know if that's just user error or my method of shuffling, but I have to be very intentional about it. So, but I'm still going to give it a smiley face for card usability. I do feel excited to shuffle it. I think the card quality is fantastic for its price. So for card usability, I am going to give it a smiley face. I'm going to give it a very high smiley face of 79. As far as card versatility, this deck is called the Influence of Angels, and I think that on initially hearing that that's what the deck is called, it might just work for angel work or whatever, but the way that the angels have been put in this deck is actually really clever. I mean, they can be seen as angels or as fairies, or as they seem to have just a very general feeling. And I think that makes this deck very versatile, because you can use it in a very specific way or a really general way. This deck really impresses me. So I'm going to give it the party face for versatility, and I'm going to give it a score of 90. As far as energy and personal connection, I feel like it has a really good energy, and I feel like I have made a personal connection with the deck. So I'm also going to give this a party face for energy and personal connection, and I'm going to give it a score of 80. As far as readability, it scores very highly for readability. I think it's easy to read just as it is on the card. The images are really clear. The titles are really clear. It reads quite traditionally as you look at the card, but then when you can get into the guidebook and it releases out these like other layers that perhaps you don't notice at first. It talks about the symbolism. It tells you who's on the card. It's actually fantastic. So I'm actually going to give this the party face for readability, and I am going to give it top scores, 100 points for readability. Uniqueness, I am also going to score it highly. I think the way that it handles the angels in this deck, the way it talks about the symbolism, the way it does, I feel like this deck is very unique in the way that it handles itself in the genre it's working in. So I'm also going to give this a party face for uniqueness, and I'm going to give it a score of 90. That gives the Influence of Angels deck a surprising number of points, 439 points, and brings it to the top of the list so far. So now we have it at number 1, the Influence of Angels. Number 2 is the Black Tarot. Number 3 is the Cozy Witch, followed in number 4th place by the Fairy Tarot, and our 5th place is the Spiral Tarot. The next deck on the list is the Wheel of Change Tarot, which I actually picked up when I was shopping for another deck, because this deck is our first indie deck we've seen so far, and it's actually on Etsy for $23. And I bought this back in January, right at the beginning of the January, after the new year, January 4th. So you can pick it up from Etsy for $23 too. It's still that price, which is amazing. So let's look at card usability. The cards are a little bit larger. And so if you had smaller hands, you might have to trim a little bit off the top or bottom to get a good shuffle in. But the shuffle is okay. Nothing I'm excited about, but nothing I'm really upset about either. So I am going to give this, for card usability, a neutral face, and I am going to give it a score of 50. For versatility, I think this deck is very versatile. It reads quite traditionally, and it's not hard to figure out what's going on in the cards, but it also has a little bit of different feel. You could see that it might be able to work in ancestral work, or connecting with people in the past, and working with the land and getting outside. And I think it could work in a variety of different specific spiritual practices. So I actually think it has a lot of versatility for that reason. So I'm going to give it the smiley face for versatility, and a high smiley face of 77. For energy and personal connection, I did connect this deck back in January when I got it, and I used it quite a bit back then. So for energy and personal connection, the energy is really good too. So I'm going to give it another smiley face, and I'm going to give it a score of 78. As far as readability, some of the titles are a little bit hard to read, and like this one, for instance, you can, but it's not like it's, I have to make some effort to look at it. And they're not all the same. They're not all the same color. And some of the images are a little crowded, so it can be a little hard to look at. There's a lot going on here, so it's not going to give necessarily a quick answer. And there's no book with this one. So for readability, I'm actually going to score a little bit lower. I'm going to give it the unamused face, but a high unamused face. And I'm going to give it a score of 35. As far as uniqueness, it is unique in this specific artist's work, but I don't know that I don't have other things in my collection that do the same thing. It jumps around and kind of feels like quite traditional one second and more modern the other. It feels a little less illustrated in some cards and over illustrated in others. And I actually don't enjoy that element of its uniqueness. So I'm going to give it a neutral face for uniqueness, and I'm going to give it a lower end of that and give it a score of 38. That is going to give the Wheel of Change Tarot a total score of 278 points, putting it at number 14 currently, right below the Tarot of Sacred Feminine, which is sitting at number 13, and the Necronomicon, which is sitting at number 15. Top 5 decks standing after this collection of decks is number 1 is the Influence of Angels, number 2 is the Black Tarot, 3 is the Cozy Witch, number 4 is the Fairy Tarot, and at number 5 is the Spiral Tarot. So that's it for the decks that are $23 and under in my collection that I acquired in 2023. Here's a sneak peek of a few of the next ones we're going to be looking at, starting with the decks around $24. So I hope you enjoyed this part of the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Supposed to be making our Christmas memories.